Anji Patel, who are the co-chairs of our deserve recognition for completing this program. Weaver, Richard Lullich, Amanda Molina, and Vicki Verasing, who have helped in the arrangements of this program. Our great communicators and visual supporters, Karen Bates, Hannah Dannenfelder, and Dan Dixon. And then there is a shout out to Jerry Lepore, who is the man that I took this gavel from. He was a great, very good support to me in the transition. I thank you very much, Jerry. And Greg Seifats, who is a member of the AIM team and is a very loyal videographer for us at the Committee of 100. And I do want to give a shout out to the Arlington, I always get this wrong, Arlington Independent Media, AIM. I keep saying they only got AIM. They've been a very good partner to us as well, and a good partner to many of the nonprofits in this community, and well worth supporting. Our next two programs are October 11th and November 8th, so mark your calendars down. It's always the second Wednesday of the month. We are under construction on our programs, but that means they're going to be very, very timely, so you're not going to want to miss them. It truly takes a village of great volunteers to put these programs together, and we need your continued financial support. There are no rich uncles among the 20 board members for the Committee of 100. And we do have expenses that we'd like to be able to grow in a positive way for the community. The way to support us is to become a member of the Committee of 100, which is simply by financing a donation to the Committee of 100, which many of you already did just by putting your $10 down for tonight. But we need a lot more money than that. You can donate online by using a credit card or by writing a check to the PO box, which is also online. And you can also volunteer. We do have a place on our website with volunteer where you can pick a committee to work with and volunteer with the Committee 100, and we're always looking for volunteers. We also periodically put needs that we have on the Volunteer Arlington website as well. One thing we really do need, and I'm happy to note Javier Martinez, who is here tonight from the Career Center, who is potentially going to be a Zoom support. We need people to help run our Zoom program, both in person here, but also when we're only on Zoom. So I have some flyers in the back room on the table. Please take a few home, find some juniors or seniors in high school or somebody who's retired and really would love to do this for us. It would be greatly appreciated. And on that note, let's talk a little bit about how this program is going to work tonight. If you're on Zoom, and we have, I think, about 90 people that are on Zoom tonight, you can submit questions for all the candidates or a specific one to answer at any time during the program using the Q&A function. If you are a person, please wait. If you're here, please wait until we get to the Q&A period after all the candidates have spoken, and I will call on you then. Quick reminder to state your name clearly when you stand to provide a question and ask the question in the form of a question. This is always a hard one for all of us. I know my husband's in the back room. We'll give you a 20-minute answer to the question. There are 4 candidates for the 2 county board seats, and I'm going to let each one of them determine what they want to say about themselves during their remarks. They've already been randomly selected to start the remarks, with Susan Cunningham going first, Juan Carlos Tierra going second, Audrey Clements going third, and Maureen Coffey going last. You have 2 minutes for your opening remarks, and they will be cut off by Mr. Weaver here. You don't want to do that. We will then go to questions from the audience. We're really trying to streamline this to give as much time for Q&A as possible. The first person to raise their hand will be able to answer the question, but I'm going to ensure that everyone who wants to answer the question as well will have an opportunity to answer. I'm also going to allow for rebuttals, but it's at my discretion, and if the question, the answer goes on for too long, or you start getting nasty, I'm gonna cut you off. At the end of the question period, each candidate will have 1 minute to make a closing statement in the reverse order as we began. So on that, I will start with Susan Cunningham with your remarks.
Great, thank you, Gina. Thank you everyone for being here. 90 people on Zoom on a Wednesday night is nothing to sneeze at. I have a full room here as well. So thank you. I am Susan Cunningham, and I'm really honored to be here with you this evening. I was refreshing my memory of CivMed's origins and taking myself back to 1954 and trying to smell the smells and feel the feels. But I was so struck by the genesis of the Committee of 100 and reminded that, you know, the thought was, we're really polarized and things are changing really fast, and our newcomers have different thoughts than our old timers. And we really just need to talk to each other, and let's have dinner and have a conversation and find our way through these challenging times. And so I was like, you know, that's a lot like what we need to do again. So really glad to be amongst you and to kind of reconnect with that thought. So why am I running for county board? You've heard probably a little bit about me, or you've seen the flurry of signs in the medians last spring. I really was called to run in large part because of the tenor of the conversations we've had the last year, particularly around zoning and around planning and kind of where we went with that conversation. So I feel as a community, we've got a couple things to work on. And I hope to do this as a board member. One is really diving deep into the details of zoning and housing to get it right. I do not think that missing middle or expanded housing options or whatever we call it, the current policy is not going to get us there. So we need to regroup a bit and get back to what we really want to be as a community. The second is really about being a community, and particularly for our young people, engaging them, and then finally transparent basic government. We'll talk more after John gets
Thank you to the Arlington Committee of 100 for organizing this event to discuss the concerns of our residents. My name is Juan Carlos Hierro. I am a husband, a father, a 26-year resident of Arlington. I'm a proud American. I am running for the Arlington County Board because I care about our community, and I believe voters deserve a choice in this election. The issues in this election cut across party lines, and if elected, I will be a voice for 10,000 of dissatisfied Democrats, Republicans, and Independents who are ignored and dismissed by the political establishment. You have the power to hold our elected officials accountable, to challenge the status quo, and to elect someone who will ask tough questions, not to be a rubber stamp for Arlington's political class. For the last 25 years, I have learned to listen to my clients' needs, wants, and wishes. As an entrepreneur and financial advisor, to help them achieve their American dream. If you elect me to the county board, I will use the skills I developed in business to bring people together to identify solutions that keep Arlington safe and create pathways to prosperity and opportunity for those who call Arlington home. My positions on important issues cut across party lines and unify Arlington voters. I support affordable housing solutions that preserve the character of our neighborhoods while creating pathways to home ownership for those who seek it. I support common sense data-driven solutions to the shocking increase in violent crime and property crimes across Arlington. I support transparency and accountability, a new Arlington way that truly engages our robust city infrastructure. And I support holding the line and even lowering taxes when possible to make Arlington more affordable. I will work with anyone to solve the big problems we face. I ask you to seriously consider my candidacy, and I humbly ask you to cast one of your 2 votes for county board for me. I look forward to a robust discussion with my fellow candidates.
Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I'm Audrey Clement, the independent candidate for Arlington County Board. As a 19-year Westover resident, longtime civic activist, and past member of the Transportation Commission, I'm running for county board because it has pushed harmful policies resulting in overcrowded schools, increased crime, and a 10-year average annual effective tax rate increase that is almost twice the rate of inflation. I also oppose the missing middle ordinance that the county ran through earlier this year. Missing middle upzoned residential neighborhoods throughout the county despite massive opposition from homeowners and those like me who believe it is nothing more than a sop to developers. Missing middle proponents claim it will end de facto redlining, even though in a February 1st letter to the county board, the local NAACP president reported that only 20% of Blacks in the county can actually afford a missing middle unit. At the county's annual budget hearing on March 28th, missing middle housing activist Alice Hogan stated that missing middle will not meet the needs of anyone earning less than area median income. That includes most minorities, seniors, and young people seeking starter homes. Instead of acknowledging that missing middle will not address the affordable housing crisis, proponents are painting opponents like me as racist. If you object to the constant misleading hype about the supposed benefits of missing middle and the race baiting that goes with it, then you should vote for Clement for county board on November 7th. If elected, I pledge to seek immediate tax relief for residents and businesses and replace missing middle with a plan that actually promotes affordable housing along major transit corridors.
Oh, wait,
Hey everyone, I'm Ruby Poppy. I'm so glad to be back with you today. I know that we gathered in the spring for a Democratic primary forum. This is a little bit different now. I am not a 25-year resident of Arlington. In fact, I am only 28 years old total. I moved to Arlington in 2017 after growing up in Northern Virginia. I'm so lucky to have 3 generations of my family within about a 30 or 40-minute drive of here. And I think Arlington is a spectacular place to live. I think one of the things that is so wonderful about living here is our consensus on the big picture values that people deserve dignity of life, somewhere to live. We need to protect and invest in our climate and our environment. The reason that I jumped into the county board race this year was that with all our agreement on the big picture values, I think it's really important that we start taking concrete steps forward to live those values. It's really easy to say what we want, to say things like more affordable housing. It's a different thing to say, where is that going to go? How are we going to get there? How much of it do we need? And how do we build into that other things that are important to us? Things like schools, things like stormwater management and retention, parks and green space, transportation. All of that has to happen at the same time. And frankly, what I was seeing is that I don't want to get 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line and realize we haven't done the work today that we needed to do to be successful in 5 or 10 years. What I'm really passionate about is creating a plan as a community that engages everyone and brings voices into the conversation that really concretely said, how are we going to get from where we are today to where we can be a community that serves the needs of everyone in the community. And I'm really looking forward to sharing a little bit more with you about that as we have the questions and as we go through this process. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm really excited to hear what's on your mind.
Okay, we'll start with somebody who may want to ask a question from the audience here in person. Anybody want to? Yes. Remember, announce your name clearly and.
I'm Dan Schutz.
Yeah.
I live in the Arlington Heights Civic Association. And have been a member of the Tiger Committee on Improvements in Arlington form of government through the civic question. This working? No.
Speak into it.
Speak up. Speaking up, are you hearing me?
Before, I did have that as well.
Test. You have the magic cut. Okay, so, I've been in the Tiger group of Civic, which was about looking for improvements in our form of government. Several of our suggestions require statutory changes. Either to enact them or to give the county board discretion. If elected, you will take office just as the board is finalizing its wish list for the legislature for the coming legislative years. Are you willing to push to include the authority to enact the changes like those called for by the Tiger in our legislative wish list, so that if the board and the community determine in the future we want to do those things, that we can without other mayors in the legislature.
Who wants to answer that first?
Mike.
Order for it. Well, Patrick is here, so Patrick, his last name is Pope, and all we have to do is tell him our hopes and dreams and he'll take care of it, is my understanding. But there are a few things before that, which is we do have this election, not just in Arlington. Don't forget, there is an election in Arlington. One word looking back.
So the first piece. The first piece is the legislature that we. The legislature that we have next year is highly dependent on who turns out to vote across the Commonwealth this November. And so it is existential. You may feel one way or you may feel the other, but that legislature, whether they're willing to play ball with Arlington, has a great deal to do with the composition. So I would just lift that up and make sure your checkbooks and online giving and phone calling are turned on to support who you want to see in the legislature. But beyond that, absolutely, I think that having the flexibility is really important, and there will be a moment in time when there is the right stars are aligned. I hope it will be next year, but it may be a year or two beyond that when we can ask for that ability. My understanding is there are some trade-offs about actually pulling some of those levers in terms of what the expenses and the revenues you can tap are. So I'll need to get more educated about that. But in general, absolutely flexibility is better than.
Hi, Dave. I'm so glad you keep asking this question because I think it is important. I've kind of half joked but half seriously said there's very few things we did in the 1930s that couldn't be improved for the 2020s, and I think that our form of government does fall into that. I'm open to the conversation. I really like the work that the Tiger Committee has done. I think in particular, expanding the number of folks on the board, given how much our population has expanded over the last 100 or so years, is really important. But I'm really looking forward to working with Patrick Pope and working with our other members of the General Assembly. I am willing to push for the authority, and then I think it comes down to us in Arlington having an honest conversation about what do we want out of our form of government, and what specifically from the Tiger Committee or from other ideas are we going to end up putting forward if we did have that authority.
Well, I do support reforming Arlington's form of governance. I don't think the Tiger reforms are the way to go. I oppose the county board's at-large system of representation because it is as undemocratic in its operation as it was racist in its origins. According to local historian Sherman Pratt, the adoption of the current at-large system in 1930 was contemporaneous with the announcement by Black leaders that their plan is to run for local office in one of the county's 3 districts. Replacing these districts with an at-large board thwarted Black political ambitions for several generations. Because board members are not accountable to their neighbors, it has also served to silence any neighborhood or civic organization that opposes county board on any matter, large or small. Adding 2 more at-large seats to the current mix and extending the tenure of the board chair to 2 years is a prescription for more of the same undemocratic governance. What we do need is a district-based board over to replace the at-large system, because almost 100 years of at-large representation has resulted in a county board that is accountable to no one.
I support the Tiger report. I think that things have changed in the 1930s. Therefore, the board members should increase. At the same time, I think that out of those 5 or 7 members, one should be elected by the people to be the head. He should not be chosen by those members. He should be chosen by the people. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a question from our Zoom. Jane Zimmerman, what is your vision for balancing Arlington's growth with sustainability in schools and fiscal health? Who wants to answer that first?
Just go back on this.
Okay.
I was thinking.
Thank you. The growth is very important. We have to have some things in, we have to fix some things. One of those is the missing middle, because we have an issue there. There's a lawsuit going on that is going to affect all of us. And therefore, it tells me also that we have a county that is divided. Therefore, we have to understand that we have to fix. That's one of the issues. The other issue is also the vacancy rate that we have. So,
Right now, because I think we have to do my flipping mine on. Yes.
okay, so that's my reference to growth.
The best way to promote sustainable growth is to require a fiscal impact analysis to assess both the costs and the benefits of a proposed development to assure that its net tax impact is positive. Unlike its sister jurisdictions, Arlington County doesn't do this. Instead, it focuses exclusively on the supposed benefits. Fiscal impact analysis is a necessity, not an option. Not only should a rigorous analysis of the demand for and cost of public services attributable to future development be available, it should be required for every major county facility and site plan development project. The question isn't whether Arlington County should do it. The question is why the county isn't doing it already. All or most of the surrounding jurisdictions utilize some version of fiscal impact analysis. Fiscal impact analysis is the sine qua non of good government. If elected, I will demand it and make its results available to the public.
I think sustainability is about integrating that throughout everything that we do, making sure that as we build and as we plan, we're thinking really comprehensively and holistically about the system and not just the individual parts. Right now, we have a comprehensive plan as a county that really just comprises 11 separate comprehensive plan elements. It doesn't include schools as one of those 11 elements. It doesn't include digital or technology infrastructure as one of those 11 elements. And importantly, a lot of those separate elements touch upon many similar topics. Transportation touches on environmental policy significantly. Housing touches on environmental policy significantly. Stormwater is a whole separate aspect of that. I think we really need to look across all of those plan elements, figure out how we can get them into alignment, and then as we're planning for our future, bring each of those elements into the plans for everything. This is not something we're going to be able to solve by pulling one string because it's interconnected, it's woven all together, and our policies really need to start reflecting that. When we are looking at site planning processes, I do think that representatives from EPS need to be a part of that conversation. think we need to start thinking about what does it look like if we do grow at the rate we're predicted to? How many fire stations do we need? How many more police officers? How many middle schools? We need to have those numbers concretely figured out because we know that we're going to continue to grow and we deserve to have those answers, which to me is why it's so important that we do create a community plan and a deeper vision that gets us to those answers and doesn't just say we should have them, but says what those outcomes and what those answers actually are.
So Jane, I love the question, in particular, the mention of schools, which sometimes when we're in a gathering with the folks who can get here on Wednesday night, we can forget about all the families out here juggling dinner and back to school night and everything else. Schools, like housing, are really fundamental to how our community lives, thrives, and sustains itself. And Arlington has been an absolute leader in the quality of our schools, in the investment back in the 1950s and even the 30s in our schools, and then fixing some of those investments to be more equitable as time has gone on. But we have never been all that good at getting schools and county to really, truly, fully be integrated in our thinking. And I see Judith Davis is in the back and Carissa, and they know that after school time is still a challenge, you know, in how we use this facility, how we use our middle schools. So we've got to get really, really more committed as a community, as leaders, as members of our community to tackling those challenges, to planning long term, but also to piloting and getting things moving in the short term. I've spent my early years living on a college campus. I spent my early professional career getting schools to work better with the district and sharing space with other public facilities. And I spent the last decade or so here in Arlington trying to get our schools working and watching our kids go through it. It is fundamental, and part of why I'm running for county board is to make sure that we pick up that thread and truly deliver on one community, north, south, east, west, all ages, and delivering the full ability of who we can be and who we want to be.
Okay, another question from the group in person. The woman, yes, give your name and
My name is Joe Reese Robert, and my husband is Jim Webster. He has an easier name. My question is, there's a lot of static around this empty middle. What is the plan for access to housing by everybody and not just the mega rich who frequently don't pay full taxes? This not a good question, and I apologize. But it's a fact that you can find housing for rich people, but not poor people.
you go ahead. We can't have both on at the same time.
Well, I think that we have to fix this problem that we have with missing middle. If you get a lot that is a single family home and you get a permit to have 2, 4, 6, 8 units built, we have a problem. And those are the things that they should have thought about before they had a 5.0 at the county board. I think we have to do reports. I think we have to do studies of how that will affect the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods will be changed forever if they continue to build many units in a single family lot. We have to fix that, and we have to come together in reference to that the county cannot be dealing with lawsuits all the time. We need to fix that before we go on.
If elected, I will urge the board to scrap the recently adopted missing middle ordinance as a revenue generating cash cow that will not redress the effects of exclusionary zoning and will not provide starter homes for moderate income residents. Missing middle will inflate land values and real estate taxes, drive out existing minority residents, accelerate gentrification of Arlington neighborhoods, increase school overcrowding, and exacerbate flooding and tree canopy loss. To promote affordable housing, I will rezone neighborhood by neighborhood based on simple to understand floor area ratio rules as recommended by the Laboratory for Architecture. Promote office to residential building conversions, invest in community land trusts, and restore the partial tax credit for renovation of multifamily dwellings, which County Board repealed in 2021.
This question is definitely near and dear to my heart. I don't consider myself low income by any means. I have a master's degree. I work at a wonderful nonprofit, and yet I am about 60 to 70% of the area median income for a one-person household. I have friends who are two-lawyer households who cannot afford to buy in Arlington at this point because it's gotten so expensive, and rent is going up at rates that we've not really seen before in this area, with no signs of slowing down. We were the third largest rent increase month over month this past month of all major localities monitored throughout the country. That acceleration is really concerning, and what to me I think is the biggest solution is getting serious about having a pipeline of projects that meets the needs, and that's not going to be missing middle, that's not going to be investing in things like that, but it's going to be more development on the corridor. We need to do that smart. We have to know what we're getting into, but we also can't bury our heads and wait 5 or 10 years and hope the problem goes away, because the harm is on the people right now. It's on the people who are struggling to afford rent. Evictions are skyrocketing. The Arlington Food Assistance Center having their highest ever caseload, even throughout COVID, of people with food insecurity. And we've seen that south of Route 50, more than half of people have basic needs insecurity at this point today. And so we really do need to take those concrete steps forward. Again, that's not necessarily missing middle. I don't think that that is going to get at the heart of our housing issues, but we need to look deeper and have a plan, have a pipeline. The GMU SHAR school said that we're falling 1,400 housing units behind every single year at the current rate that we're building. So that's taking into account the new buildings that are coming online, and we're still not meeting the goals that we need to be at. So investing in the Affordable Housing Investment Fund as a county, community land trusts are important. It's going to take a long time to get that set up, but I think that that is somewhere we need to go. And I'm really excited about the home ownership study that the county has been embarking on for the last year or so to come up with ways that we can make condos more affordable, where the older condos, for example, have HOA fees in the $700 a month range, which compounds on top of interest rates right now, which are impossible, and we're seeing the least affordable housing market we've ever had. So, thank you.
So I think I'd always start this with housing is incredibly important and it's incredibly complicated. And I'd probably also want to just think back again for in our history lessons, you know, Joe Foley and Mitch Foley and others who thought about these questions decades ago, worked hard together as a community to think about what can we do to move the needle. And we're still working to move that needle, and it's getting harder, but we still have to come to the table. So we've got AHC, we've got Wesley, we have independent homeowners who are renting or even offering free space in their house. We need all of that, and we need to get the regulations in place so that that can be done in such a way that it truly supports all of our folks at different ages and lifestyles, while being fair across. So I'm the only one up here who's actually built, financed, and maintained affordable housing. It's not easy, but it's absolutely crucial to the community that we want to be. And we've got to get better at spreading the wealth around the whole county and making sure we can get folks into rental and ownership.
We're going to now go to. That was your question, so I'm going to go to the Zoomers to ask them questions, ask your questions. This is a good one, actually. Given the impact of trees on quality of life, What specific steps will you take or advocate for to preserve and expand Arlington's tree canopy? And this has been offered by Elizabeth Roderick.
Yeah, so I think that this is incredibly important. It is a quality of life issue. It's also connected to a lot of social determinants of health, the prevalence of asthma, heat islands, things like that. And you know, the last numbers that I saw, we've increased our trees on public property, where we're losing them is on private. And I think that that is really important to note, because in Virginia, law does not allow us to tell private property owners what they can and can't do on their land with some very specific restrictions. And so we need to look at what those restrictions are. We need to consider things like lot coverage, incentives for keeping trees, incentives for keeping mature trees especially, and we also need to help people care for their trees. I know that it can be really expensive and daunting, but you have a large tree that might be threatening your roof, your property. What do you do with that? And if you don't know how to take care of it, if you can't keep the tree healthy, that can become a dangerous situation. We saw with the storm this summer, many houses that were damaged because of these mature trees that were not adequately kept up. So we have to look at many aspects of the problem, not just planting, not just preserving, but keeping them healthy. And you know, in addition, making sure that our public spaces continue to be very green. As someone who does live in an apartment, I have very little control over my own environment, and I really depend upon the parks and the green space that the county has in order to get that quality of life and make sure that I have an outdoor space that is enjoyable to go to. So investing all across the board is the way that I see it is most important.
Okay, in its recently adopted community energy plan, County Board touted the importance of tree canopy to our quality of life. Yet according to a recent report by the Green Infrastructure Center, Arlington tree canopy coverage is only 33%, down from the 2017 county estimate of 41%. It is difficult to say which is worse, the damage to our quality of life or the county's double speak on the subject. Having clear cut more than 1,000 trees from public property in the last 2 decades, Arlington ignores the benefit of mature trees at its peril. Not only does tree canopy serve as an invaluable carbon sink, it is also the first line of defense against flooding. If elected, I will lobby for HB 2042, a bill originally promoted by the Arlington Tree Action Group and passed by the State House in 2021, to enable localities to adopt ordinances to preserve mature tree canopy.
Consider policies that will take tree areas, surfaces such as imposing heavy fees to cut down mature trees on existing lots by the right developers. In the recent past, the Parks and Recreation Department has in many instances paid over Arlington by expanding the width of trails and increased impervious surfaces for playing fields. We need to consider establishing a policy whereby the county sets an example of minimizing the increase of impervious areas.
So, yeah, so the tree cover is absolutely crucial. Again, I'm gonna throw it to Patrick, because the first thing I asked him when I decided to run was, will you fix the tree ordinance that we've just broken further with missing middle? So there are some state level things that can help us keep the minimum up. But to me, this also goes back to the housing question, right? So if we over index on housing everywhere, then we remove the green space and the trees. And if we instead really focus on reuse of buildings, whether it's existing apartment or condo buildings that are aging, whether it's single family homes that could better support other uses or more dense living, we can preserve some of the big trees that we've got. And we've got to get way more aggressive in how we put trees back. So there are things called microforests, you know, where you really invest in the multiple levels of a forest. You don't just plant an oak tree and plant a shrub and hope for the best. you really engineer it, and I think that's the kind of thing we're gonna need along Route 50, along Route 66, or throughout Roslyn and other places very selectively, so that we have those oases, so we manage our stormwater, so we manage the heat island, and we get it.
Okay, somebody on this side of the room. Anybody have any question over here? Well, I have one question that was handed to me earlier by Venus Fallon. The public schools of Arlington are very important in quality of life in our community. Would you support increasing the fixed share of county revenue received by APS to meet the need, particularly raised by the gap from COVID and the population increase expected in our schools?
Well, I believe that we are at 47-48% that we pay the schools. And that also limit us on doing other things in reference to the budget. I think 47%, 48 plus allowance that we have to give to Metro is a lot for Arlington County. We have to find a way, we have to do a study in reference to, what, how can we try to lower that amount. But of course, the quality has to be the same. I also have a daughter that goes to public school, and we have a wonderful education, but to increase it to a higher percentage, I think it will be problem. Also, at the same time, we have a budget surplus of 26.9%, and for 2022. And that's about 2.44%. That we have to also see how can we don't have the surplus, because it's a lot of money. One of my radical ideas is for that money to go back to the taxpayers. And we're living in a challenging times, and therefore we need to figure out. But to increase the budget, to increase what we give the schools, we have to study that.
Well, I agree with Juan Carlos on this subject. First of all, I'm a fiscal conservative, and so I would naturally be inclined to agree with what he says. But also, I understand that the projections are that the Arlington school population has actually declined or is expected to decline. At least in the immediate coming years. So I question the need on that particular basis. Also, I understand that the greatest problem facing our schools is the achievement gap, which grew significantly during COVID. But I have long believed, although I'm not an educator, that the problem is not money, it's heuristics. There is something about the teaching model, the STEM model perhaps, that does not encourage minority achievement. So I don't think throwing more money at that particular problem is going to solve it. And also, I agree with Juan Carlos on the subject of taxation. We are really imposing a huge tax burden on our residents. It increases every year. I believe it's unsustainable because it's over twice the rate of inflation. And I think we ought to look at ways to streamline our budget, not ways to increase it.
My mom is an elementary school teacher, and watching her do Zoom kindergarten followed by hybrid kindergarten followed by a bunch of kids in the classroom who had never sat still outside of their own home before really breaks my heart. I think young people are struggling, kids are struggling so hard, teachers are struggling too though. That was a hugely disrupted period of time where we asked more of everyone in our schools without providing more compensation or anything to support them. We really do need to fund our schools. I think that starts with improving the relationship with the county board and the school board. I'm open to the conversation about what the proper amount of revenue is, but I think that comes from having really honest conversations about where do they see that money going to? What is it that they need additional funding for? I think aligning on some things better, like mental health services, so that we're not competing for therapists and psychologists to hire both at APS and both for the county, when really those people can work across those populations. Having more of that collaborative mindset is going to be very important, so that we're not just unnecessarily raising taxes. I don't think that any of us want to do that, but we do want to make sure we have the best teachers, that our teachers are adequately paid. I think that is something that's really important to me, and I think is important to all of us. We know that education is a public good. It's something that's critically important for young people, but we also need to invest in the right things for our schools. And I think our school board is better equipped to make those decisions than I am.
I would say absolutely open to moving those numbers around gently over time. And yet, there's only so much to go around. And this question you have over and over about affordability is intimately tied with how much we're gonna spend on schools, how much we're gonna need to pay teachers to be able to live in our community, to educate our kids. So it all goes around. You can't answer one of those questions without really diving into all of them. But I do know, having built schools and run schools, it is really, really important to get into the details and to be honest and transparent about what your theory of change is, what you're spending on, and whether it works. I do think we have got to spend more time and money on our young people. Some of that is in school, some of that is in out of school time. Where the line is and whose budget it is really something we've got to work through. But we need to focus on the outcomes of the results, not just on the numbers. And I do really think we need a bit more of a conversation and transparency with our school leadership about where we're investing. This year there were a couple of strange things that may make more sense once I understand them, but our administrators got 30 days of vacation automatically plus some leave, whereas our teachers didn't. The things like that I want to understand more to make sure that we're getting that as well as results.
Okay, a question from our Zoomers, from David Riggs. Do you feel that the county is appropriately supporting Arlington's nonprofit arts sector organizations, and why?
Yeah. Yes, I think that it has a support, but the county also works with other organizations, Catholic organizations, Christian organizations, to be able to provide, housing and food. I know that there's an organization by the Catholic Church that delivers food every day of the week. And I also, when I had some time, I was able to help, with those deliveries. And I think that they should continue. That's another item in the budget that we will be able to see what else. I think that homeless people, Arlington should not have homeless people. But it's not only, just giving them housing, but it's also giving them support to be able to, to being able to grow, to change. And at the same time, it's very important for me that there's no neighbor left behind. So if you know of a neighbor that you need, a neighbor, and most of the time is not giving them things or giving them food or doing things, but just by listening, I think that's very helpful.
Well, I think you may have misunderstood the question about how the county has supported art programs for the arts.
I misunderstood that word.
Do you want to respond differently, or?
I can live on and come back.
Well, I can't speak to the dollar amount that the county has given to the arts, but I know that every year
During the annual budget charade, a number of groups come before the county at the annual budget hearings. To request increases in the amount of funds that the county makes available to them, and the county has generally been quite generous. So I don't think the question really is, have we been cheating our nonprofit arts organizations? I think the question is, have we been cheating our taxpayers? At these budget hearings, the taxpayer's position is never heard. It is true that the county itself conducts 2 hearings within 2 days of each other. One is the actual budget hearing, which has to do with allocations for groups like the arts, and the other is a tax hearing. For some reason, the taxpayers never show up at the second hearing. The only voices that are heard are those who are asking for money. Now, whether the county has dealt fairly with the arts relative to the other nonprofits, I cannot say. I will say that they are extremely generous every year to the nonprofits that they do subsidize in this county.
As a former theater kid and longtime violin player, the arts are so important. They give you a sense of purpose. They give you something outside of just, going to work, doing your responsibilities. They bring joy to our lives. And so I think it is important that we invest in the arts community here in Arlington. I think that the Arts Commission has done meaningful work to figure out how should we invest in the arts community in Arlington. The Enriching Lives Strategic Plan is pretty comprehensive. I think it's about how do we do the things that we have said that we're going to do, and it is a balance. I think we are going into tough budget times, and all things considered, we're going to have to make tough choices. I don't want to disinvest in the arts. I know we are in need of more spaces, more performance opportunities, more places for people to get involved, not just as youth, as a lot of arts programming is dedicated towards those under 18, but also as adults, because bringing that joy back into our lives is going to be really important. So figuring out how we create that balance, I think we've done okay. We can always do better. And I would like to see us have those conversations with the arts community. I know that University Arts had us for a really wonderful forum in the spring, but continuing that dialogue and always being open to hearing from the people on the ground what it is that they need.
So we did have a really lively conversation in the spring, and I think that arts is a really important piece of community, of how we relate to each other, particularly when we have other differences, whether they're age or background. So it's fundamentally something we do want to continue to invest in as a community. Because our space is limited and expensive, that to me is one of the biggest places to focus first. How are we using the spaces that we have, whether they're here in this building, late at night, whether they're a faith community that has space on Monday through Thursday, whether it's the schools that are closing up at 5 p.m. and have auditoriums and have and everything else. So it is, I would say, an invitation to use what we have more effectively to make sure the funds that are put to the side, including like the black box theater funds that we have not yet invested, really do get spent. And then to think both about near-term needs and long-term sustainability to make sure that we have accessibility to those arts opportunities throughout our community that includes transportation and not just having to sign up on the crazy websites. But I think we do need to invest, and it absolutely needs to be part of our planning, our physical planning, our long-term budget planning, to make sure that we give attention to that. It's not enough.
I am a supporter of the arts and have a daughter that draws, paints. She has an A class on her class in art. And I think that we should check what is the budget surplus used. And part of that budget surplus should go to the arts. I think that the arts are good, they're all good for senior citizens, for teenagers, for everyone. Because it brings the best in all of us.
I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to talk. There's a guy behind the very back of the room there. Yes.
You have a mic.
My name is John Selmansberger. I have a couple of questions about growth. We keep talking about growth. How many more housing units do we need to add? What is the optimum population for this little county, one of the 3 or 4 smallest counties by square miles in the United States? What is our optimum density? How much should we grow without overcoming the capabilities of our sewers, water system, electric grid, roads, etc.? What is our goal for growth in Arlington?
I think it's exactly the right question that we need to ask now and keep asking, and we have been asking it since 1930s at least. It changes a little bit with the technologies. Like if you think about where we were in the 30s and 50s and what densities we had the streetcar lines, we had some ability to kind of go in and out of the district, and that was something that we responded to and we were able to build to. We now can build taller buildings, and that gives us some additional flexibilities. But getting the mix right, like you said, balance, I think we've heard balance a couple of times tonight, is really, really crucial. And that means we're not eating up all the green space just to pack in more people. It also means not everyone's living in a 1-bedroom with, with amenities. Some families may choose to live 10 people in a 3-bedroom. You have different ways of living. I think we can meet the needs, but we need to articulate what our priorities are, what our must-haves are, and some of those are the ability to perform, the ability to have green space, the ability to educate children, the ability to get to jobs and to get to food and retail. And I think we're seeing that play out on Langston Boulevard right now as we sort of debate how much density and how quickly makes sense. And is housing the only density we're talking about, or is it other activity from the arts to the parks to retail, and that also all those pieces are part of our community. We do need to balance them and then rebalance them as the world continues to change around us.
I think one of the biggest reasons I got into this race is because we don't have those answers. It is my generation's lives that are going to live with the impact of if we override our sewer systems, if we override our green space in our schools. And it's really important to me that we do answer those questions. I am also not oblivious to the fact that we are not going to put up a wall or a moat and keep people out of Arlington. We are beholden to the regional and national dynamics of housing and growth and localization. People want to live in urban areas. People want to live where they have transit and walkability, and parks and green space and all of these really wonderful things. And so I think to me, it's not necessarily about having an objective, we're gonna hit this number and that's where we stop, as much as it's having a lot of flexible plans that say, if this is where our population heads, what do we need to live well in that number? What do we need? What are the resources? What are the capacity building things that might not be glamorous, might be like the sewers and the electrical structure and digital infrastructure? But how do we answer those questions for all of the many possibilities? How do we have a plan in place that lets us adjust, whether that is short-term right now, as we're seeing our office vacancy rate go up and that space isn't going to be used the same way that it's always been used, but also long-term as the Metro Washington Council of Government projects that we're gonna hit 300,000 people in Arlington by 2050. We need to be ready for that because it is going to be much worse to have those people want to move here, to have that pressure on all of our resources. And to not be in a place where we have the ability to respond and to provide what people need, that's going to harm our quality of life. We're already here in Arlington, it's going to create, human issues, especially when it comes to some of the more critical infrastructure things. And it's going to drive the people who make Arlington such a wonderful place out of our communities. We need to have plans that protect what we love about Arlington, that keep it a really good place to live, but that react to providing the resources that we need in order for the kind of unfortunately or fortunately inevitable growth that we don't have control over.
Let's try to keep our hands full shorter. Well, I think Maureen has hit the nail on the head when she mentioned a council of governments for the metropolitan Washington area. They are responsible for, according to Arlington authorities, for having told Arlington that it has to increase its population by X amount, or to provide for an increase in population by X amount by 2050. And these numbers that came down from the Council of Government did not take into consideration the existing density of the jurisdictions that they're dictating to. So, for example, Fairfax County is at least 5 times the size of Arlington and has a fraction of the population density. It also has recently invested, along with Loudoun County, $3 billion into 6 new metro stations designed for transit-oriented development that would absorb a large part of the population. And still, Arlington tells us that it's required to provide X amount of additional density. And this is not only wrong-headed, it's unreasonable. And so I think what's really needed here on the county board, since we have our own delegates to the Council of Government, that our leaders speak to the Council of Governments and tell them what our people have been telling us, that this is unsustainable. And that the Council of Government, the local Council of Governments has to come up with a better plan.
It seems to me that before you start giving out permits to build units, 2, 4, 6, 8 units, you need to have done a study. How is this going to impact the neighborhoods? Today, I had lunch with a gentleman that said that he doesn't want to do anything with changing the way his neighborhood is set up. He got, and he was very surprised because there's no study done before the approval of the missing middle, and that's incredible. Because it affects the neighbors. It also affects the people that are coming in and the people that are I met the other day a couple that said that they are thinking about moving out of the country because they cannot afford the taxes on 1,000 square feet townhome. So those are the things that we have to, before we change anything, we need to have studies done to see how is that going to impact not only the neighbors, but everyone else that is in the neighborhood by zip code. And that's that's what I think we should do. And we have 4 candidates that you are able to Maureen is the only one that supports the missing middle. And so it's unbelievable that until this time that everybody is up in arms in reference to being against missing middle, she's for it.
We have a little bit more time. I'm going to take one last question from our people online, and it's a good question. It's hard. This is from Audrey Kremer. How can Arlington better support older adults who need affordable housing and affordable assisted living. One of my favorite.
Senior citizens for me are the best. I was brought up by my grandparents from my mother's side since I was 6 months old. Of course, they have passed away. But the county should have programs to be able to support. They have worked all their life to pay taxes. They're in a fixed income. And we should do everything possible. Again, if we have a surplus, that it should go to the arts, part of that, but also it should go to subsidize and to have grants for the senior centers. So I will fight for that. It is I am passionate about that subject again because of my grandparents. And I will work with anyone, blue, red, to be able to achieve that.
Well, it's all but certain that missing middle will inflate land values and real estate taxes, drive out existing minority residents, including the elderly, accelerate gentrification of Arlington neighborhoods, increase school overcrowding, and exacerbate flooding and tree canopy loss. That being the case, one of the principal things I would do if elected is put the kibosh on missing middle, because it will drive out the elderly people who are currently just getting by with their mortgage and tax payments. So that would be the first step that I would take. And then of course, the second step would be to promote some of the alternatives that I mentioned, including a rezoning neighborhood by neighborhood, using simple farm rules and providing density incentives to those landlords who are willing to set aside affordable units in their rezone multi-family housing units. Okay, and I would also again promote office to residential building conversions, which because of the lack of need to invest in the ground from the ground up should serve to reduce the cost per square foot of providing that housing. And then the other commonly mentioned alternative is community land trusts, where nonprofit organizations own the land, but the owners who buy can basically have ownership rights until they vacate the premises. And finally, I will restore the partial tax credit for renovation of multi-family dwellings, which most of you do not know that the county board repealed in 2021, which eliminated, as far as I know, it was the only incentive that was ever provided to any landlord to preserve a market rate affordable unit, and that's why we lost 20,000 affordable units in the past 20 years.
I think this is another example of how the private market for housing does not provide for everyone's needs in the community. We need to be working with developers because they're the only ones we've got in our corner right now, unfortunately, to make sure that we're embracing universally accessible design, that we're meeting our needs for this very specific population. We have an existing tax abatement program that reaches about 800 to 900 low-income seniors every year. I think that there's probably a lot more people who would qualify and who need that program, but it's about doing outreach and ensuring that people know that that program is an option to them. Even for folks who have a fixed income up to 90 or 100,000, there's often options within this program that already exist, but folks don't know about them. And so making sure that we have units to move into, because right now we are in the process of rehoming my 91-year-old grandmother who's lived in the same house for the last 50 years, and it's really stressful we don't want folks to give up their communities, but there's also certain needs that come along as you age, and we need to serve all of that and treat people with dignity, treat people with respect, make sure they have options, and make sure that they have agency in their choices and are not just going with whatever that they can afford because there's so few options in our community.
And I would just echo the same without saying it all again, that property tax deferral and just accessibility is really important. There are a couple of issues that weren't raised up, and I think they are important. I see Betsy Francis here, and I know that for our most needy, most vulnerable elders who may be living on the streets or maybe close to living on the streets, we have really no solution right now for providing them nursing care. We send them to Betsy and like send some Band-Aids over and hope everything works out. It's not really a solution. So we need to get on that. One of the things we skipped over in the middle conversation was relooking at the accessory dwelling unit rules, which right now are structured so that you can only lease a little bit of your own house rather than move into a little bit and rent out a bigger portion of it. So if you're 95 and your mobility has been limited and you want to partner with a family who can take care of you, can actually legally, I'm sure we're going to look into. And then the last piece is preserving market rate affordable or preserving folks in their homes. We have a lot of aging apartments and condos, and they are difficult to maintain, to reposition. And that's something where at least advising and potentially helping finance is going to be a critical part of our preserving affordability for dollars.
I think we're at time, and we're going to now let our candidates do their 1 minute wrap up, and we'll start with Maureen Coffey, go to Audrey Clemens, Juan Carlos, and then end with Susan Cunningham.
Thank you all for sticking with us tonight. I really do appreciate your time and your engagement and your thoughtfulness. I think that this is the type of community that is what makes Arlington so special, and it's what I have come to love about our community. I feel really passionately about solving the complicated problems that are before us. I do public policy professionally at the Center for American Progress, and I know how complicated it can be. Your best of intentions are not always enough. And that's where we need to turn and look at data, look at evidence-based practices. That's the type of thinking I want to bring, in addition to coming from just a bit of a different perspective. The younger generations in Arlington are facing something very different than what other generations have faced, whether that is financially and economically, in the housing market, or with mental health. We should have that perspective represented on the board. More than 50% of Arlington is renters, and yet we've never had a renter elected to the county board, which I think is an important perspective. And I'm out of time. So.
Well, I share one thing in common with Maureen. I'm also a renter. I rent. Now, if you think that you need to vote Democrat because only Democrats win, please think again. If you vote Democrat in this race, you lose, because the Democratic candidates either embrace the county's missing middle agenda or will be forced to go along with it once elected. If you think that missing middle will remedy racial inequities, then think again. Missing middle will force existing minority homeowners out of their homes and make it even harder for others to qualify for a mortgage. It will have major negative impacts on Arlington neighborhoods. If elected, I will push harmful housing policies that threaten Arlington's quality of life. I will promote proven alternative solutions to the housing crisis. If you are dissatisfied with done deals and broken promises, vote climate independent for county board on November 7th, because county board needs more than a rubber stamp.
It's been a pleasure to be with you all here tonight. A choice before voters is clear: support someone who will find solutions to the big problems we face, ask tough questions and demand accountability, or support another rubber stamp who will ignore or dismiss tens of thousands of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents to maintain the status quo. My common sense position on the issues cut across party lines and unite Arlingtonians on affordable housing, on reducing crime, on accountability and transparency. Arlington voters are united. Casting both of your votes for my Democratic opponents will result in the continuation of the political status quo. I am personally asking you to entrust one of your votes for county board to me to help give a voice of tens of thousands of Arlingtonians. If you have any questions, please visit my webpage, www.votefierro.com. Thank you for being engaged in the civic process. And remember, in-person early voting starts September 22nd. I hope to earn your vote.
Great, well, thank you all for sticking with us, and thank you to the other candidates. It's been a really great conversation both in the primary and in the general, and it's a great community that we have so many voices willing to speak out. I'm running for the board to represent you and all of Arlington because I really do think that I have the experience and the skills to meet the moment that we're in right now. I've trained as an engineer, I'm a mom of teenagers, which is maybe more qualified than anything. And I've led as an executive, both nonprofits and for-profits and large billion-dollar budgets. So I have the chops, have the problem solving and the commitment to listening and to balance to help us find our way through this moment and build the community that we want to. I have a website, susanforarlington.com. There's literature in the back. I love your email if you haven't already signed up, so we can keep you informed. And I'd very much like to ask for your vote. Thank you.
I just want to remind you about our boat race coming up again in October and in November, the 11th of October and the 8th of November. And don't forget to vote. Don't forget to donate. And if you want to see this again, it will be on our, you can like us on Facebook, you go to live Facebook, or it will be on AIM as well on our website. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a month.
Oh, what is?